Start a small business. No need to work 40, 50 hours a week, slaving your life away. Obtain financial freedom, be your own boss, and create your own destiny. Moguls are the new superstars. The path to country club membership and a leased Mercedes-Benz is paved in gold as you take your business trips to Orlando or Vegas. Validation from your in-laws is just an LLC and Facebook business page away. At least, that's what they tell you anyways. Through social media, websites, and targeted ads, you're sold an image. Small business owners seem to walk on water. You'd think you're the last person on earth working a regular job with a regular boss. But there's trouble in paradise, and its name is in over your head. People start looking to start their own business, don't know what they don't know. But that's why we started our Small Business Confidential podcast, to share what we've learned from years of experience. There's not a lot of people in on this, so remember, dear podcast listeners, you heard it here first, off the record, on the QT, and very hush-hush.
Hi, everybody. This is Mike Reilly, Small Business Confidential, the dirty little secrets of what it takes to be successful with your own small business. And with me is one of my favorite sidekicks, Mike Ferrante. Mike,
Great
how you doing this morning?
Superb. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, you probably heard Mike in earlier podcasts, but this one we're going to talk about, kind of follow up on our college podcast. And we're going to talk about the AP courses that you take in high school and why they are a waste of your time, or I should say your kids' time. So your better use of time would be to have your son or daughter start their own little businesses. Paper route, lemonade stand, cut grass, babysit, et cetera, et cetera. Mike, your initial thoughts on all of this?
Yeah, well, I lived it. You know, we know each other's stories pretty well, and that's exactly what I did. Paper boy, had my own little business in college, delivering subs to the men's dorms. I was the sub man.
Right. We
And
talked
then,
about that earlier in a podcast. Right. Exactly.
yeah, sub man. And then, of course, some years as a painting contractor, and now real estate agent, broker, investor. And of course, one of the topics I love is multiple streams of income. You know, start these businesses, and then once you own a business, now you've got multiple streams of income.
You know, I think when you and I were doing, I know for me, especially when we were doing all our little small businesses in grade school and high school, you know, it was sort of a given. It wasn't this, this is going to lead to a more enhanced future for you. I mean, you know, you just did these little side jobs, right?
That's right. You know, it snowed. You grabbed your snow shovel and went door to door. Anyone whose driveway wasn't plowed, you'd knock on a door and say, "Hey, I'm standing here with a shovel. I'll shovel your driveway for $10."
Right.
It might have been $5 at that time. That's how old we are, right, Mike? But
Right.
whatever it was.
I hate to tell you, Mike, I remember it was 50 cents or $1.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
My back hurts just thinking about it.
Yeah. But the minimum wage was $1 an hour. So I date myself, but I'll never forget in 1962, it was December of 1962, and Cleveland got socked in with a snowstorm. There must have been over a foot of snow. And I woke up, you know, that morning, and I learned what parochial school meant, because on the TV and the radio, they were saying all Cleveland parochial schools are closed for the day. And I looked at my mom and said, "Is that us? Is that my school? We're closed? We don't have school today?" And she goes, "Yep, no school today." I was like, that was my first snow day. But my parents were living in a duplex. And so the landlord who lived next door, you know, he hired me. I think he paid me a quarter or 50 cents to shovel the sidewalk. And then I just went around and started knocking on doors. I think nowadays with the helicopter parents, I mean, the parents would probably literally be going door to door
with the kids.
With the kids, which I don't know whether that's the best, education, but, the ability to just knock on doors and, put together a little business plan, like how much money do I want to make per hour? I mean, nowadays, you could go around and say, I'll help do X, Y, and Z, and at least make a minimum of $15 an hour as as a high school or junior high student, and people would trip over themselves keeping you busy. Oh, I need somebody to help clear out this back room, or boy, I really could use some help, washing windows, or doing some light, landscaping, stacking up some wood. And before you know it, you could be developing a couple customers at 15 an hour, and make yourself a couple $100 during the week after school, and half days on the weekends, without having to necessarily work at a company.
Right. No, I think you make a great point though, Mike, about learning how to talk to people. That's the first step in being a good salesperson. And we've had this conversation about what makes a good salesperson. But breaking down that fear barrier of knocking on the door, and something as simple as saying, hey, I noticed your driveway is not plowed. I'm here right now. I'll shovel for X dollars. That's a sales call. And so as a kid, you and I learned how to get over that hump, that fear, because that's one of the things we talk about with our real estate agents, is that hesitancy to pick up the phone. Well, I don't want them to hang up on me. I don't want them to get mad at me and hang up. Well, guess what? Some people are going to say no. We're going to knock on that door and they're going to say, no, my plow guy's coming, or I'm going to do it myself, or $10, that's too much. That you're learning at a very early age how to make a sales call.
Right. And just think about how, where these roads lead to. Let's just take these two independent roads. We've got the lemonade stand road, where you're working on your own, and then we got the AP, spend all your entire time studying so you get good grades. Where do those two roads lead to? Let's just kind of get way up on the treetop, like 40, 20 stories up. We're walking up and we're looking at where these roads lead to. That's one of my favorite analogies, the treetop view. Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's see where these paths lead to. Well, let's go to the SATs, get good grades so you get in a good school to go. What are you learning? First of all, with the AP stuff, you're probably learning absolutely nothing, because it's all going to short-term memory. It's not going to long-term memory. This is not something you may remember 5% of it, 10 years later, but for the most part, all you are is a monkey in a zoo. And it's all going short-term memory. You're going to get this grade, and you're going to take AP this, and you're going to take AP that. You got A, and then you're studying for this. But your goal is to get a good grade to get into college, right? Am I missing something?
No, you're spot on.
Okay. So now you're in college. Let's say you got into a good college. Okay. So now what? What did you learn in high school? You learned how to get into a good college. And now you're taking these courses, and you're getting that good GPA, because somehow you think that getting a good GPA is going to land you that great job. Or there's a road that peels off, and that's called grad school, law school, med school. So you've got to get, I understand you've got to get these good grades so you'll be accepted at a good med school. But what happens if you don't like being a lawyer or being a doctor? My wife thought she was going to be, her father was a doctor, and everybody said you'd make a wonderful doctor, and she would have made a great doctor. But guess what? She discovered her freshman year in college that she hated studying sciences and biology. That was not the color of her parachute. So now you're on this road that may actually lead to a dead end, because you may find yourself endlessly studying to get into med school, and you really have no desire to be, you don't really understand what it's like to be a doctor. What happens if you're squeamish, and at the sight of blood,
Hmm.
or somebody cutting into a cadaver, you're going to faint. Okay? So you don't even know what the color of your own parachute is. And that road could lead into a dead end. Okay?
Agreed.
And here's the other thing you didn't learn. Because now, okay, let's say there's a road there. It leads into a dead end. Well, I'm seeing from my treetop that you could climb over that wall that's blocking you. And there's other pathways there. But are you going to have the ability to understand that you can climb that wall and maybe look for a different path where you can stop going down the road of being a doctor and look for another pathway? Would you have the ability to do it? Or now are you going to be trapped because you're piling up student loans and you're studying for a job that you don't like? Do you have the ability to stop and change? Doubtful.
Yeah.
You never learned that. You never learned how to deal with failure because your whole orientation was to get good grades to get into college. So jump in, help me out.
Well,
here.
case in point, there's a great personal injury firm that I'm pretty tight with, the Proles and Proles, a husband and wife team. And Sebastian started his career as a medical doctor. And, he did have that vision. He did have that wiring in his head. And after a very short period of time, he realized he hated being a doctor, but he had followed that path. And then very quickly, he got invited to participate in a really interesting program where medical doctors could also earn a law degree. And he went to Case Western for that very interesting program. And so he earned his law degree, and he and his wife realized, hey, we want to be in business for ourselves. And they approached it. She was an attorney, and he's a medical doctor who's also an attorney. So how well suited are they to be personal injury attorneys? And they were able to pivot, but not everybody, like you said, has that capacity to make that pivot. Kind of interesting that they did both, Mike. They went down the path of the higher education and then started their own business rather than just landing at a firm.
Right. There's an illusion that if you if you get good grades, that you're on the pathway to success.
Right.
That's again, we're Small Business Confidential here. It's the dirty little secrets. That's a fallacy. Okay.
Yeah.
Because and I said in my earlier podcast, the famous story about the two professors, the gentleman C, the people that are really, really, really successful, they did not get straight A's. Okay. I mean, just look it up. The other dirty little secret is 50% of people who go to college drop out. Why are they dropping out? They're dropping out because they hit that proverbial wall. Well, let's go back. Let's go back up and look at that other pathway, the lemonade stand. You're 13 years old, or maybe you're 10, 11, 12 years old. And you're just every day, every week, you're spending maybe 10 hours a week doing side jobs, working around the neighborhood. And you're doing a variety of different jobs. And those jobs are based on recognizing need. Okay. What are the needs out there in your own little neighborhood? Well, it seems like there's a lot of needs for maybe decorating a Christmas tree for some elderly lady, hanging Christmas lights, decorating for Halloween, cleaning up the basement, cleaning out the garage, washing cars after we've had a couple of weeks of winter, and now we got a day, in the 40s, and you can go around. So you are able to do a variety of different jobs, and you're starting to get a sense of what the market is telling you. Your thoughts, Mike?
Yeah. So as you were talking about that, it made me think of a story. Use MBAs as the example. It used to be you thought, oh, I get my MBA, that assures me of getting a great job. And of course, I got my MBA at Case Western and found pretty quickly that MBAs are a dime a dozen now. But a buddy of mine was telling me about a friend of his named Luke. and Luke got this great job working for Brooks Shoes. Okay. And he was telling me, oh, the guy makes this much money and they're flying him here and they're flying him there. He's doing shows and, introducing new products. And I'm like, wow, sounds like he's got a great job and he's working really hard. And he works for a gentleman by the name of Mr. Brooks. Brooks Shoes is owned by Mr. Brooks. I said, who would you rather be, Luke or Mr. Brooks? And I think that kind of hit home with him. But at the end of the day, some people want to be Luke. They don't want to be Mr. Brooks. But being Mr. Brooks was kind of cool, I think, a little cooler than being Luke.
Well, the interesting thing is I don't think people even think about that, because I think if you have, if you have that lemonade stand, it forces you to think. And this is where being a mentor helps. Having that mentor there, your mom or your dad, or maybe that uncle who you admire, or maybe somebody at school who can mentor you about what jobs to take, how much to charge, how to organize your money. What happens if you have a difficult customer that you don't want to work for? They said they were going to pay you $15 an hour. You were there for 4 hours and they gave you $50. They just shortchanged you $10. This is where you need to have the built-in mentor there, so that mentor can explain to you that these are things you need to learn in life. But Can you imagine if that kid started in 7th grade? Let's say 7th grade is what, 12 years old, 13 years old. But let's say if he starts in 7th grade and he works 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. What's that? 6 years, 6 years?
Right.
Doing small jobs. Think about how much that kid has learned. And on top of that, how much he's made. And especially if by year 3, that mentor is telling them, okay, it's time for you to set up an investment account or a savings account where you're saving $100 a month, what you're making. Just put it in the bank, put it in the bank, put it in the bank. And if he's doing that, he's learned how to organize, he's learned how to sell, he's learned a variety of work. He understands, most importantly, that he always has the option to change.
Hey, let's stop here. We got to pay some bills. 30 seconds, and we'll be back.
If you enjoy listening to our Small Business Confidential podcast, we're sure you'll enjoy our first podcast, The Cleveland Real Estate Investor. We give outside investors an inside look into the real estate market in Cleveland. Cleveland has been on the rise, and investors from all over see those cheap prices and salivate. Our job is to educate those investors and steer them in the right direction with several years of experience of how to do it right and many examples of how to do it wrong. Find the Cleveland Real Estate Investor podcast on any app you listen to your podcast today.
Now, our person who's on the SAT AP route never learns that. They are tunnel vision walking down that road, and they've never even bothered to go up the treetop and see where that road could lead to. That's called think time. Think time is asking yourself, what exactly am I doing? And, quite frankly, Mike, I think for a lot of people, suicide for young people, midlife crisis when you're 40, I think people just get trapped in a road that's goes nowhere, and they just don't feel they have any options. I'm not trying to make this morbid, but again, it's that illusionary thinking that you're on the right path.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you mentioned that age range, though, too, Mike. I think that, when I was at Case, the stats said that most entrepreneurs hit their stride in their 40s. And, so that should be a time when you're thriving, when you're, making the most amount of money you're going to make in your life, for example. And, as I reflect back on my path, while I certainly agree with you on the lemonade stand mentality, because that's what I did, I think like Gary Vaynerchuk says in his material that the value of learning by doing, can exceed what you get out of school books and college and so forth. So I think there's still a lot of value in, working for someone to learn. I learned more in 4.5 years at the construction company that I worked at than I did in all my schooling. But there's that there is some inherent value in learning from someone, having that mentor who may be a boss as well. When I think back to 18-year-old Mike, I was not ready to do what I do today. Even 22-year-old Mike after college wasn't ready to do what I do today.
Yeah, but if you had a mentor when you were 13,
would have been different.
It would have been different. That's
Yeah.
the key. You've got to have a mentor. And, I see all these courses that, teach entrepreneurialism. It's a
Yeah.
joke. There's no
Yeah.
mentoring going on. I mean,
That's
they're
my
talking.
point. Yeah, I took those classes, Mike, and I floundered because those classes did not prepare me for what I needed to know to really be an entrepreneur.
Right, exactly. It's a lot of very basic courses. And I was saying earlier about, how to organizing your time, how to recognize who to work for, who not to work for, how to sell. Look, you don't know this when you're 13. And you were lucky that you got that construction company, that you finally got a mentor. So if you and I had a mentor at 13, and this is the problem. This is we'll do a podcast on this next week, how to find a mentor. But first of all, the mentor is the most essential part of that AP project. It's like, that when you're taking AP courses, there's a teacher there, right? Teacher's giving you the grade. You're not just, doing this online. They're going to give you an A or B or whatever, and you got to do the work. The same thing has to be had with the lemonade stand. You have to develop that mentor. And that mentor has to be a lot more street and a lot less books. And maybe there's going to be a book component to it. Yeah, I want you to read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, or, the 1 Minute Manager, or The Millionaire Next Door, or there's hundreds of books, right? And you've got a bunch that you've read. But the mentor is got to keep it real for you. And the mentor can't be looking at it from a vanity plate, like, well, I'm helping this young lad, blah blah blah. A good mentor, a great mentor, is somebody who will take the time to answer your questions. Now, for you out there who are going to start the path down the lemonade stand and the lawn cutting, you better be asking a lot of questions. And you better follow that dictum that there is no bad questions. And what should I be reading? What movies would you recommend I watch? How to succeed in business without really trying. I mean, there's hundreds of, how the guy who started out in the mailroom at the William Morris Agency, and 10 years later, he's running the Hollywood studio. I mean, how do these people get to where they got to? Just go on Wikipedia and read those stories. Yeah. You're going to see that there is hundreds of different pathways, not just one. So if you're taking the AP route, the problem is there's just one route, as opposed to these multiple routes that can help you get to where you want to get to. And let's just end this podcast and talk about, okay, so where do you want to be when you're 19 years old if you start at 13? Mike?
Well, I know where I was. I was still entrenched in.
Let's go back in time. Let's say we're mentoring somebody at 13, and we've got a 6-year journey here. Where do we want this kid to be when he's 19? I'll throw out the first answer. You know where I'm going. My 19-year-old has got to be thinking to himself, I don't need college to be successful. I'm going to college for the experience. I'm going to college to audit a lot of different classes. I'm going to college for self-discovery, but I don't need college to get a job because I've just had 6 years doing a variety of different jobs. That's how I want my 19-year-old to be thinking. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I think another word to add to that list is maturity. I think about my college years and I sure grew up a lot during that time. Learn to take care of myself, learn to do my own laundry and, all the things that we've talked about before. But when I think about the actual stuff I took from the classes, does that really contribute to my success today? I've answered honestly before and I'll do the same today. No. So I'm with you, Mike. I think though that hopefully your mentor tells you, look, you need college to help you grow up a little bit, if that's the case. And if you don't, I think, having that option of saying, you know what, I don't necessarily need it. Here's another option. When I was a kid, when I was that age, Mike, no one told me that was an option. And I wish they had.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the mentor, if I'm the mentor, I'm telling this kid, you're 19 years old, you graduated from high school, you've got some money. Why don't you just take a year off from school? Why don't you take a gap year and put some structure to it? And because really, for a lot of people, it's more like leaving home. College is leaving home. Or college is you're not leaving home, but you're going to college to get a job. Because you think if I don't get that degree, I'm not going to get a good job. And my 19-year-old is not going to be thinking that. He's seeing that he already knows how to make money. He's seen every year he's getting better and better at that. So why should he get sidetracked? I think a great experience could be go to college for a year or two. Don't even worry about the degree. But be very mindful of racking up a lot of student debt. That's going to be a ball and chain around you.
Yeah, we're seeing it. We're seeing it in our business, the real estate business. That ball and chain stopping people from home ownership.
Yeah, yeah, and again, small business confidential, the dirty little secrets. You go to college and you drop out after 2 years because it's not going anywhere. You got 2 years of debt. What's that? $50,000?
Could be easily, sure.
Easily 50,000. As opposed to, I bought a house when I was 20, and I bought a duplex, and I lived on the second floor, and I rented out the first floor. Now, instead of a $50,000 debt, I've got an asset worth $25,000. And I don't know. There is a lot of ways to be educated. A lot of ways. Read the New York Times every day. Just pick it up and read it. Watch CNBC halftime report. Read the New Yorker. Be curious. Go to the art museum. Go to the Cleveland Orchestra. There's a lot of ways of expanding. And maybe take a year and go to college for a year without worrying about what kind of job you're going to have. Just go there for the pure joy of learning.
Yeah, I love it.
So
yeah, and your story about the duplex, Mike, I mean, that was a business. You were running a business at that time.
Yeah, when I got that duplex, it was the second duplex that we had, subletting it. And again, it's that sort of thing. But I learned that in 1962 when I started shoveling snow that one winter. I was born in 53, so I was 9 years old, and I was going out, and one person asked me to shovel snow, the landlord of our house, and then the neighbor came over, and then I said, I'm just going to start knocking on doors. And before you know it, I was working 5-6 hours a day for the next couple of days. And I'll never forget in the dining room, the snow shoveling season was over. I was going to go downtown, and I had given my money that I'd made every day to my dad, and he gave me $6. $6, which was like $600. It was unbelievable, that money. And I went downtown with my mom and I think my sister, and we went to Higbee's in Cleveland, and they had a little store where you could buy Christmas presents. And I bought my family some Christmas presents, like a candy dish. Candy dish was like $1 or something like that. But the point is there was a sense of independence. It was your money. These were your choices you were making, and you felt empowered by that. Now, trust me, when you have a mentor, a really good mentor, that mentor is going to be looking around the corner for problems that may happen. Maybe you're working too hard. You're not studying enough. Come on, you gotta make sure if you're in high school, you're learning something, right?
For sure.
But we're going to spend more time on our next episode coming up in a couple of days, 3-4 days, talking about what makes a good mentor. And we'll have Brooke there, and think about one of your BNI people, Mike, because that's a mentor program right there, right?
For sure. Yeah. My first 6 months of BNI was just learning so much about business that, all those things I didn't learn.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is what the Small Business Confidential is, right, Mike?
That's for sure. Yep.
All the it's like, what's that Woody Allen movie about sex? You did that. You did that great movie about based on that book, all the questions about sex that you were afraid to ask. So, all right. So anyways, listen, mentor, we're going to probably do a 2-parter. Mentor part 1, mentor part 2. All right. We'll let
Sounds
you go,
good.
Mike.
Looking forward.
All right. Have
Take
a good
care.
weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Small Business Confidential. To support, please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Also add our podcast to your favorite streaming services. Everything is appreciated, and we'll be back soon with another episode and upload schedule. The person voicing the intro's name is Travis Reilly. Thank you, Travis. And the music was done by our engineer, me, Amari.